Jackson. I'm Ted Stahl. I've been a big fan of the work that you guys have been doing for years, but I've never been able to afford one of your more flagship instruments.
Yep.
Then, of course, you came out with the Craft.
Yeah, the original
kind of
Craft DIY, which eventually morphed into the Sculpts and the Craft Synth 2.0.
Which was a great move because as much as I loved the potential of those, they weren't like gigging type of instruments. They were great for exploration.
Absolutely, yeah.
But so it was a wonderful way for you to confirm that you had a market with the more affordable instruments, but then to step it up to the point where there's something you can throw in a gig bag, you can plug in and work with. But this is a step in between there. We're getting more into a full-fledged instrument, yes, like your original 001 and
the 00 series. So we had the 001, the 002, and the 008, which was a combination of hybrid products, digital and analog, and a discrete discrete analog A-voice as well. Yeah.
Whereas this is pure digital.
Purely digital, yeah, absolutely. I don't think we would really realistically be able to afford to offer something like this as an analog product with all of the tech that's in there. It would be just as expensive as the 00s, you know?
Exactly, and that's one of the beautiful things about digital is it gives you those engines, that architecture with code.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that it isn't difficult to write the code, but you know, it's like, oh, we're going to add something like that. Well, that's not a physical part.
Yeah.
That's actually how can the processor handle doing that? And if so, let's add it to the workload and see where we go from there.
Yeah.
So as far as the actual, are we dealing with multiple engines or a single engine in this? What is our digital approach to the oscillators?
Single engine. I mean, the oscillators, basically, we have ganged around each knob, we have a bunch of different oscillators. So there's 5 on each dial. Once we select a bank, we have 5 that we can choose from in terms of morphing. But in terms of the oscillators, it's wavetables, yeah. And in terms of the oscillators in here, it's going to work out at 32, which is going to be 4 per voice. So there's quite a lot of oscillators to go from. And where that really comes into play is when we use the spread. Because then you're getting, duplicates of the oscillators coming in at detune values.
Okay, so 8-note polyphonic,
yep,
4 oscillators simultaneously, and wavetable.
Well, 32 oscillators simultaneously, 4 per voice.
I'm sorry, 4 simultaneous per voice, yes, right? 4 times 8, 32. And you said 24 collections of 5.
Yes, so we scan through them all here. You can go through all of the different banks there. But it's not where the kind of limit of the sound sources are. Really, what happens afterwards is much more important.
The way you modulate through them and everything.
Exactly. Once we've chosen something, if I just initialize the patch, once I've chosen something, I'm just going to get a little bit of more harmonically rich patch so we can hear what's going on. Once we've chosen something like this, and I choose, let's just use the phase mod, it's quite... So we can modulate here, and then we have something that's new for us with these static processors. So I've chosen something. There's a whole bunch of different processors that we can apply, and I can do that for each
of the 4 oscillators.
Exactly.
And then each of those can be modulated then?
Well, these can be, actually, the oscillator modifier here, this can be modulated and dialed in, whereas these are static. The WAV mods are static as an application after the fact of what you've chosen here.
Gotcha.
Some of the modifiers on this one are going to work in a way where it's like a carrier modulator kind of thing, so 2 affects 1, or some of them work where they're just kind of applied to the whole thing, but the static ones are the latter. It's just applied as a process to the eventual kind of decisions that you make here.
So kind of like an effect.
In some way, I would really, like, in layman's terms, liken it to a body. If you were looking at like physical modeling or something like that,
right,
and you wanted to apply a body so that you had a resonant kind of thing here, that's a really cheap way to describe it. But realistically, that's kind of like the best way to kind of latch onto something that makes sense. It's really completely changing all of the characteristics of the sound by the process that's applied.
So if we were to use that simple crude analogy, it's like the chamber of an instrument and changing the shape of that.
I mean, it's not actually. This is just in terms of giving you an idea of
right.
what
It's not
what the
physical
process is.
modeling per
not
se.
At all. No, not at all.
But
it really, what it's doing is changing the shape. It's changing the amount of harmonics that are in there, and some of them are really, really brash. Some of them are actually really, really soft. So they're all completely different and unique. Yeah, and actually the combinations of shapes that you choose prior to the fact really, really influence how the wave mods actually affect the overall sound.
Sure, because what you've done at that point is you've redefined your frequencies that you're using.
Completely.
And you've said this is the new version of this wave now, and now the modulations that you do to that have a completely different subset of frequencies that you're working with, so the outcome is completely different.
But I mean, if you look at them, when I mentioned body and things, you know how crude it is. If you look at them, these are all still familiar things. Ring modulation, phase modulation, amp mod syncs, different types of syncs, and wave shapers, inversion. All of this stuff is very familiar. And I wouldn't really say for me it's the same when we come to the actual WAV mods. It's stuff that is really familiar. A triangle fold, a sine fold, different types of shapers. There's a couple of things which is unique to us, a scrunch kind of shaping, which is really, it's like that kind of asymmetric stuff. You get the wave shape and you're kind of squashing it in a bit. But there are things that when you...
We need a video of you in there showing that, because that's beautiful. It's like, it's doing this.
Of course. Yeah, of course. I mean, it's hard to fathom without a visual readout what that stuff is doing. But when you hear it, as soon as you're cycling through them, it makes a load of sense. You're like, oh my god. In combination with how many things I can choose for the wave shapes, how I dial in this modification here, and what I then eventually do with those WAV mods, the actual combinations and the permeations that we can get to is so staggering. It would take me in excess of a day to go through all of them to kind of register, what's actually going on with each combination.
Well, that's the beauty of digital engines.
Exactly.
To allow that level of exploration and that almost limitless potential. I mean, I love analog, but we kind of know the playground. We know where things are going with that.
Yeah.
We're looking at different ways to create soundscapes, different ways to come up with sonic nuances that haven't been explored multiple times heretofore too. Curious, I noticed that when you were choosing different waveforms, we had a visual representation of the waveform itself.
So if I come through and choose something, we can choose some things from our previous synthesizers, the 002 here, and we can have a look at those. We have readouts of all of that stuff.
So that's the morphing that we're seeing between those particular waves in that wavetable.
Absolutely. So if we listen to that wave on its own,
that's an interesting visual. What's that?
mix up.
Oh, so it's panning between the left and right?
It's not panning, it's just dialing in a mix. We could have it in any ways where you're pulling them up and down, but this is just a straight mix, between the two.
I just saw the 1 and the 2, and I was wondering if that's where it was going.
Just a crossfading, really. So we have both waves.
Oh, crossfade. Okay, got it.
Second wave, yeah.
Having said that, when you're actually playing the instruments, and I know this isn't quite finished yet, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Is there an intention to have this function as an actual real-time oscilloscope?
No. I think the process of drawing that and actually having like an FFT or something listening to that, I'm not sure what
it would take away from the engine.
Well, it would just be so CPU heavy that it would, So we'd have to remove features.
And we don't want to remove features. We never want to remove features. Fair enough. So the overall look, is this what we're going to see when this is released, and when is this going to be coming out?
We're looking at like mid to late November. There are a few things that are going to change at this point. The steel anodized top plate here, we've just had these mocked up, and they're a little bit far away from the Pantone that we had kind of specified for it. I think there's quite a lot of factors when it comes into choosing a color for these anodized steel plates. It's almost a porous object, and the amount of time that you bake it in really defines how the color comes out. So we want it to come back a little bit deeper blue, so the contrast here pops out a little bit bit more.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing to make the actual text.
And maybe the finish on the bamboo sides, we're going to revisit the wooden end. So there's a few things that will change, but majoritively this is the shape of what's to come. There is just a lot of unique options in this synthesizer.
Well, and that's good. And with digital, there's so much potential there to make discrete instruments that could be working side by side in the setup. It doesn't have to be one or the other. There's enough that has some overlap, but enough that is different that makes them stand on their own.
Yeah.
Do you have an audio input on this?
Yes.
So at what point in the engine does the audio come in?
If we're looking left to right, here. So it's after the filter. Essentially, what will end up eventually is that we will have filters in the effects section, so you can mimic it and turn it into a part of the voice structure in a roundabout way.
Right. So not the filter the way it would normally go through, but the filter through effects.
Exactly, yeah. And then we can modulate all of the effects and things here, so it can really become part of the patch. But I think if we were to put it kind of pre or at the same point as the oscillators coming in, I think the gain staging for that would be really, really ridiculous to handle. It would be a very, very different product.
Fair enough. Just trying to get my brain wrapped around that.
Sure.
No, I've got to admit, I've wanted a modal for years, and to see a modal at this level, to have seen you've gone from the actual flagship premier instrument to bring it down to literally the PCP boards,
the most affordable that we could make, yeah.
And then build way back up, and then to include so much of what was in the original flagship instruments in this one. That's kind of like a dream, and to pull that in not just under $1,000 but significantly under $1,000 American dollars. That is quite a stake.
There are some more subtle hints to the double O's other than just in the synth architecture. You know, in terms of the knobs, the design of the knobs is directly inspired from the double O's. The joystick being a prominent feature of the double O's as well. These are kind of hallmarks for us, I think. And the joystick is really great in this. We can decouple the pitch bend and assign anything across there and lock it. So you could use this as an exploration tool. Find the point in the patch that you want and then just lock it, and the joystick is locked. It's in that point.
Even though it's spring-loaded, it's holding it at the position that it's at.
Often when people ask us about this, you know, it's spring-loaded and things, and you see them going, oh, then you have to describe the lock to them, and they're like, oh no, perfect. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Having said that, you said that you could assign. I was always a big fan of vector synthesis. Back in the day, is there a way that you could assign each oscillator to 4 poles and do kind of a vector synthesis?
I won't do the X and Y at the moment, just for the demonstration's sake. I think I had that one going in a negative direction. So we can hear it on that side. Let me find out where we are here. So if I go back to Y plus, and I'll go in a positive direction. But we could put those all around, and it would have. It's probably my mix. We could have them sort of everywhere.
And that transmits MIDI CC on 2 channels? On 2 different CC controllers?
It would be 4-axis. So no, it's 4.
Oh, it's 4. Oh, cool. So at that point, you could go ahead and play whatever and stream that MIDI data, and then when you play it back,
completely.
Just like a vector synth.
We could actually record that into the sequencer. We have 4 animation lanes in the sequencer. We don't have to record any notes in. We could record in modulation,
and
right?
Then play what you
and then have it playing. Exactly.
Nice. No, I think I first explored that with the MS-2000, the Korg MS-2000, where it would do that. But it makes it gives you the modulation, it gives you the life, the organic nature of a sound that's evolving without locking it into specific notes, so it can continue to follow your performance and evolve. No, that's
Evolving, yeah, completely is key for wavetables, isn't it? The evolution of the sound over time. And in this, it's like, yeah, you can really push that to a nice boundary.
absolutely. Well, I'm tickled to know that we could actually go ahead and do the whole vector synth thing with that, because that was always a favorite of mine when came out originally, the Prophet VS.
Yes.
And of course, you know, a lot of those timbres have inspired so many digital generation synths. And then that,
Yeah, absolutely. I think they put the VS wave shapes straight into the Evolver when it came out, you know?
because they were so iconic.
Yeah, for sure.
No, awesome.
There's a few other things to touch on here. Obviously, we've got a three-slot
Effects, yeah, I was going to
section.
ask about that.
So we have a separate distortion, a kind of wave shaping overdrive, and then we have 3 slots that will be ganged into delays, modulators, and reverb.
I'm a big reverb fan. I mean, I'm curious, the algorithms that you have with the reverb would you compare them to anything out there right now, or?
I mean, they have been designed from the ground up, so a comparison would be kind of moot.
Would you say that they are?
At this point, what we have in here that we're showing currently, we only have 3 effects that we are going to show with these protos up until this point. We have a chorus in there, we have a sample rate reduction, bit crusher / noise, lo-fi effect, and we have a delay.
So you don't have reverb to listen to right now.
Well, the thing is with the reverb, we want to make it as expensive as humanly possible. I mean, our DSP engineer has kind of tirelessly been working on the effects after he kind of tied up the voice engine and stuff. It's been no rest for him, I don't think. He has been, really hammering it, and he's doing a really great job. I'm like just grinning ear to ear every time I hear something new. There's a few things I want to touch on before we get to the patches that we haven't spoken about. So we have a programmable arpeggiator in here, which we can tie rests into. So I could, very simple like that, or I could go.
You've done that a few times, I see.
You get used to it after a while, and then following that we have a 512-step real-time sequencer, which is input quantizable. So you can really either have the complete nuance of your playing of all of the roles, or we can have that quantized down to whatever division you'd like. Really, really fantastic in terms of performance. The sequencer is where we mentioned the animation earlier. So we don't have to record notes into it, we can just record animation.
How many channels is that?
4 for the animation.
4 channels.
Yeah.
Excellent. You know, that people may ask for more, but honestly, 4 is a really good. There's a lot you can do with that.
Absolutely.
How many LFOs and envelopes do you have on this?
3 envelopes, 1 mod, 1 for the amp, 1 for the filter, 2 LFOs, 1 global, 1 polyphonic. The polyphonic LFO has a little trick up its sleeve, which would be really, really difficult to set up in terms of our mod matrix. So we have a 5x11, 5x12 mod matrix. I get the numbers wrong here. So we've got 8 slots here, we've got 4 static slots. The static slots are there for kind of common assignments like after touch to cut off, note to cut off, and kind of LFO1 depth with the positive directions.
So things that you don't want to chew up modulation slots
exactly.
for, they're just more common.
And we have something else in the LFOs which is kind of nice like that. We don't have to kind of have an expensive amount of modulation to do, which is to have kind of frequency division. So the LFO ties to a ratio of the frequency of the note that you're playing. So it becomes another modulator, and it adds overtones, undertones, all sorts of stuff. I'll very, very quickly assign something here so we can hear what that does. So if I go for the LFO2, to the cutoff, down, so I'm going to do that. You can hear it at the moment, traditional kind of LFO. And then we come into these root note kind of divisions.
So you've gone into audio rate and then you're breaking it down at the frequency points?
Yeah, so it's always in tune.
So you're like tapping into like different harmonic resonant points at that point?
It essentially adds overtones above and below. So it's overtones, undertones. because of all the modulation that's happening,
Right.
it's essentially
But it
another
locks into
oscillator that's
those.
happening on top of everything. Yeah, absolutely.
That's-
And that would be really, really difficult to set up. Even with key tracking, that would
my
be
gosh.
incorrect because of the intonation of a keyboard. It would actually be between 2 and maybe 15 cents out on a traditional synth.
And you
Whereas,
wouldn't be able to do it on analog at all.
not easily.
No, well, not consistently and holding
No,
it.
no, it would drift. It would be out.
Right.
Whereas this, we've kind of just given you access to the precise value.
That's neat.
That's cool.
That is something.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen that elsewhere.
No, again, so many different options, and you can combine, mix and match, and just keep exploring in those directions.
I think that's it. It is kind of, we're getting to the point of realizing the amount of possibility in terms of sound design with this is so vast. It's really, really hard for me to state that properly and actually not feel like it's just an understatement. It's incredibly vast.
Yeah, it sounds like a company line or something, but seriously,
That's from
it's
my
a
personal
statement of fact.
experience. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I kind of glossed over this. The original modulation matrix that you
Yes.
got set up here, is that 8 slots, you say?
So
and then the
it's
4 dedicated?
Yeah, 8 slots that are user definable, 4 slots that are static.
Okay, of the 8 slots that are definable, can you have more than one source affecting a destination?
Yeah, of course. So we can define all of them. If I did it on the app, I could just click and drag any of these. But it's basically, I could have all of the things coming from LFO1 affecting a whole bunch of different stuff.
Right.
It wouldn't have to be. It's completely user definable.
Well, I mean, like what you just said, if I could put LFO1 on a whole bunch of things and send it to different directions.
Let's
but
do it right now.
Could I take?
So LFO1's doing all these different things.
But if I wanted,
Now LFO2 to do something to the same thing. Yeah, of course. So wave 1 is being affected by 2 different LFOs.
but is it possible to put LFO1 and LFO2 affecting the one thing in one slot, or do I need to use 2 slots to do that?
Oh, you wouldn't be able to do a combination of sources.
Right, that's what I was just saying.
That's a fantastic idea, but it's not possible with this.
I've got a couple instruments that can do that. Actually, I think the Novation Mini Nova allows you
Yeah,
to do...
in a way where it's actually one of the sources LFO1 and 2, right?
Right.
Yeah. I used
Stuff like
the,
that.
I think it was, what was the ASM2, the little blue rack mounted one? Supernova 2, I think I had for some time.
I've got a Nova, but I've always wanted the Supernova. But
Fantastic.
brilliant
I actually sold it,
instrument.
but they're fantastic synths. It's quite a diverse kind of mod matrix in that sense,
But still, I mean, at some point you say, how many slots are you really using all the time?
yeah.
I mean, I've got a ton of slots on a number of my instruments, and honestly, for almost every sound I make, I might be using like 4 or 5.
These guys.
I think one of the key takeaways with patch design is that it doesn't always have to be everything on,
Exactly.
You don't have to turn absolutely everything on to get a good sound. More often than not, that will cause, some issues.
Well, yes, this is a sonic playground, and I appreciate you taking the time, Jackson, to get into what it really can do. Because
Speaking of pianos,
you're kidding me.
no, rough approximation. It's not.
Okay.
It's not exact.
Wow.
It's quite hard to hear in this environment, but I know you've got the audio ins there. Hopefully, you can hear that quite nicely.
I'm sure. No, the fact that back in the day, before we dealt with samples, to get something that sounded that close to a piano would have been unheard of.
I mean, it's still clearly a synthesizer when we open it up.
But still, a very musical and playable patch.
For real,
and,
yeah.
And like a piano, and having a lot of the timbral aspects of that. Oh, that's awesome. Well, let's take a peek at some of the patches here. I gotta admit, I'm a big fan of pads. is
sounding, I guess.
You are speaking to my heart with that patch. That is beautiful. That is.
Yeah, please do.
We're picking which envelope we have here, so it's currently on amp. So if I wanted to increase the...
Actually, you've just assigned an LFO to it. Sorry, we left that on from earlier. It's fine. But we're going to have a little bit of variation on the attack now.
There we go. And at this point, I can go ahead and bring the release up.
Release there, yeah, perfect. Then I guess that one as well.
Oh. That is lush. That is beautiful.
We also have a drift that we can dial in here, so we can have a voice drift so that the oscillators all kind of...
to give it more of an analog feel?
Yeah, but we can spread traditional detune, but we can also do this to have that kind of sloppy... Every time I play, it's slightly moving out, in and out of tune, you know? Yeah.
That is. Okay, I've got a question for you. Is this how? I wasn't expecting this. You know, visually, you know, you expect things to feel a certain way. These, there's not a lot of resistance on these encoders.
They're endless encoders, yeah.
But there's not like. They're really soft touch. I'm used to a little more resistance.
Yeah, sure.
Is there?
I mean, the thing is with these encoders is that the shelf life of them is so much higher than anything else we could put in there. So it's a trade-off between, do we put a potentiometer in there which has a high failure rate but has some nice resistance, or do we put an endless encoder in there which is going to last, 10 to 15 times longer?
So psychologically, when I turn that, it feels to me, because it doesn't have the resistance, it feels cheaper, but it's in fact the opposite.
Well, in terms of its shelf life, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
These encoders will last.
I'm not trying to be judgmental.
No.
That
The psychological effect of a lot of these things, the weight of anything, even the physical weight of a product is massive.
Am I allowed to?
Please do, yeah.
Oh yeah. See, if this weighed, like a box of tissues or something, psychologically you would. Oh, and then of course there's the thing when you play it, if it's moving around on you, So yeah, there's no question there, but I guess they don't, the important thing is that no matter how they feel, they are solid. That's what you're saying to me.
100%, yeah.
Then it's just a matter of retraining my mind as I turn them.
They don't feel like they're just going to take off when you spin, do they?
No. It's not like you spin and they keep going or anything. No.
Yeah.
No, but they. And I like the fact that they're not incremental. You don't have the clicking. Never like the.
Well, actually, we do have two indented encoders here, but they're just for the page selections.
Oh well, that makes sense. No, that's fine. But like when you're tuning the filter cutoff, you don't want to feel that. When you're adjusting your envelopes. You don't want to feel click, 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 because you get that sense of the opposite of a fluid experience.
Absolutely, yeah.
See what I'm saying? No, they're not. But hey, if they're...
I mean, the nice thing about them being less resistive is that they're actually quite fast,
I'm not actually getting... should I be hearing... Thank you. It helps if you mess with your envelope and that is. Do you have any other pads? Just curious.
Yeah. Let's see. I actually have a lot of like on some of the unnamed patches, a lot of these are kind of pad type sounds. More digital.
Oh no, but that's
Here you can hear the polyphonic LFO at lower values.
nice shimmer to that. Are these ones you made yourself? Are these going to be included?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have patch design by a multitude of people. I've done the patch design for the previous two products with one of our other developers as well. But we're going to have more people invited kind of to do patches for this. I think it's important because we have 500 slots, and this thing is so versatile that having one person or two people just focusing in, it would be very. Oh, it's a little spider. It would be very. Yeah, sort of, what's the right word for it? It would be a kind of a mono vision.
Exactly.
And we actually want something that's got more depth and more variety, because this really is capable of having a vast amount of variety, you know.
Yeah, with so many dimensions to this instrument, you don't want it to seem like it's single dimension or even two dimensional. You want
that's it. I mean,
three dimensions. So
we can have this sounding very, very modern or very, very kind of vintage. It can kind of do the whole gamut from late 70s through till now, really, in terms of its design possibility and its sound possibility. It is as equally a dance music product as it is a vintage jazz product or whatever. You can do all of that stuff, you know, synthy, beautiful, rich pads through to really brash basses. You can, you know, there's no real boundary for that.
I got to admit, thinking of the other digital instrument that hit the scene this week, I was thinking that I was concerned this would kind of be hidden amongst the fanfare for that, and that it wouldn't shine on its own. You've totally changed my mind on it. And in particular, the sonic capabilities and the depth of those, as well as the depth of the tonality of this instrument. The fact that one patch you brought in there did not sound digital. And as much as I love that other instrument, I have not heard anything on that didn't sound digital. Everything sounded very digital. It wasn't bad. I mean, in fact, I believe they're marketing it as unabashedly digital.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you should tout it, really.
But this is unabashedly musical. There's a lyrical aspect to this, and that there's an organic sense of this too. And even though on one level, like, they allow you to pick all 8 different waveforms and assign them, cherry pick them, and then modulate through them, sounds like the choices that you played through there have been well thought out.
There's been a lot of time on the wave banks and which ones relate nicely to each other.
And even though someone might say, well, you know, that is much more limited, it is on that level, but with your other architectural elements on top of that, that's just literally what brick you have chosen. You can build whatever you want with it. You can create whatever architecture. The brick is not really the limiting point. It's merely that starting point. And you've provided a ridiculous amount of bricks to begin with as it is. So there's quite a wonderful feel with this, and I cannot undervalue listening to this how it's got some meat to it. And that from a digital instrument to still give you that meat, that's saying a lot. Kudos to you all.
It's really, really nice to hear. I mean, thank you. Yeah.
I also, you know, I love the form factor. As much as I like a larger keyboard, I don't need a ton of large keyboards. This is great to take on a gig. It's not too big. It's built to handle, I mean, obviously you're not quite done, but from the heft and the overall approach to your architecture, it's going to be made to gig. It's made to take that kind of rigor.
It's enough keys to sit down in front and start programming.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
Three octaves is nothing to be ashamed of, and full-size keys and a guitar keypad. You know, you've got easily something to work with there. But if you want to play it from a full keyboard, it's not so big that you can't have it right above and still program with it while working with the full keyboard.
You know, put it on an X stand and have a control keyboard underneath. We have the full-size MIDI there for you to do that.
Exactly. So it is a wonderful balance. Kudos to that choice. It gives you something portable enough that you can take full-size keypad, a decent number of keys to work with. But if you've got it in the studio and you really need the larger keyboard, it's not in the way it can be just right above there to work with it. Heck, it's almost, it's not that much larger than a peak.
No, no, you're absolutely right.
So I commend you on that as well. You have won me over, sir. Wonderful instrument.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate your time. And if you don't mind, I'm going to play through. Can I pick whatever patches?
Yeah, we're going to pull you back down to somewhere around here, and you can just go through. So you press the patch button once if you're in a different place, if you're somewhere around here, you press the patch button to come back to the load page, and you can go through in increments here. Select the one that you want. Some quite soft organy bits here. Yeah, feel free.